And I just wanted to share a quick story of how I met Dani. Well, actually, I met Dani like yesterday in real life, but I met her in our RV Entrepreneur Facebook group because I saw a post from someone saying, oh, something about how she loves this group and she just bought a business from someone in this Facebook group. And I'm like, looking at it, I'm like, you just bought a business off of Facebook? Like, that's some serious trust right there. And so I sent her a message. I was like, please tell me more about what you were talking about because I'm so interested. And as an entrepreneur, I feel like the highest level of entrepreneurship is not how much money you make. It's like being able to sell your business. It's like, oh yes, like I just sold my web hosting business last year and started my next one. That's what I imagine in my head. And that's Dani's story of she was able to sell her web hosting business through our Facebook group, crazily enough. And now she runs Simplified Business Systems, where she teaches entrepreneurs and other small business owners like me how to create these processes to make your business flow. So please welcome Dani Schnakenberg.
Thank you, Alyssa. All right. So I'm actually really glad Alyssa started off with that story because I am going to reference that a little bit later. But first, I want to know who here is in this workshop because you went to another workshop or session and they mentioned you need systems and processes. Raise your hand if that's why you're in here. Only a couple of you. So everybody else just saw this and thought it looked like fun? All right. All right. Okay, there's been a lot of those too. So, and then this front row here is because I made them be here. So, well, part of the front row. All right, so I'm Dani, and let's see if we can bring this up. So just a little bit about me. So yes, I sold my business, my last business before this, in the Facebook group, and I did that because I was able to get it to a point where I could just hand it over to somebody else and they could easily take it over because we had the systems, we had the processes, we had the client base. I did not sell it for a whole lot, let's put that out there. But it was able to be handed off because it no longer worked for my lifestyle, but it was perfect for another RV entrepreneur. Though, as Brandon would say, she is now a stick person entrepreneur, but we love her anyways. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have 5 kids, they're all mine, and a 60-pound golden doodle. So when people hear that, the first thing that they always say is, how do you do it all? I don't do it at all. But what I've done is I've simplified, I've prioritized, and I've automated what I do choose to keep on my plate. And then I do have a secret weapon sitting up here up front that helps me do it all. So what it comes funny, you can go sit in the back with Scott. No. Okay, so when it comes down to it, you can build all the systems and processes in the world, but if you haven't done those first, you're just going to have too many and you're still going to be overwhelmed. You have to simplify what you're working on. We saw Brianna talk about having 5 streams of income and that being too much. And multiple streams is great, but you got to build one, get it systemized, then build the other. So you have to simplify it. You have to prioritize which one you want to work with, which one's going to make the most impact, and then automate what you can to free up space if you want to work on something else. Oop, a little far. Okay, maybe. Did we die? Oh, come on. Okay, so we're going to talk about who needs systems and processes. Oh, it's on the display, it won't let me do that. So who in here is already in business? Let's start there. All right, a lot of you. Who is just starting to think about a side hustle to get out of a 9-to-5? Got a couple of those? Okay. Who's been in business 10 plus years? Cool, awesome, I love to see that. Okay, so no matter which stage of business you're in, you need systems and processes. And we've heard this all weekend. We heard Techno RV, who is $1 million business at this point, say that that's a big area they could improve on. We've heard it from small business owners, solopreneurs. We've heard it almost in every session we've talked about. Every level of business, no matter how long you've been in business, everybody needs systems and processes. And let's face it, we all left that 9-to-5, and some of us created that 9-to-9, as Brianna said. We did this to ourselves. A lot of us are in our RVs, building our businesses, and we aren't leaving our RVs. We can't go camp where there's no Wi-Fi because we've kind of built that cage around ourselves. So how do we get out of that? Why do we need business and systems and processes so that we can get out of that? What are the benefits? So the first thing, and Carinza, thank you for pointing this one out for me. I love James Clear, and Atomic Habits was great, and I kind of forgot about this quote. So it's, goals are good for setting a direction, but systems are best for making progress. So no matter where you're at within it, if you are new and just setting your goals, or if you're ready to grow your business, you need to have the systems to be able to move forward. Everybody comes in and they have these big goals. You visualize what you want. You know what, if you were in the financial runways class, you know that amount you need to get to. And then we always hear about action steps. We need to do these action steps, but once we get that all out, it can be kind of overwhelming. Now what do we do? Now how do we get there? If you are still in your 9-to-5 and you're doing that side hustle, and you do your visioning, and you write down that goal, and you write down those action steps, you may realize I don't have that much time. And that's a great spot where people just kind of freeze up, they fall off, or when you're ready to add that new income stream to your existing business, and you get through that, it's the systems that are gonna help you move from being stuck to actually getting it done. And then not just getting it done to where you create more work for yourself, but getting it done to where you have time to go hike, spend with your kids, not sit all day in our RVs where there's Wi-Fi. So here's a couple of the benefits. So we've really been talking about more time. And if you guys can't see that smaller font, these will be available later. I know Alyssa said they're going to do kind of a thing where you guys can go download these, but I'll read it off. So you'll have more time for whatever you really want to do or whatever you need to do. If you're building that side hustle, this is super important. So we've covered time and that we want more time, and systems will help us get there. It also helps you build client trust. So there's two areas that we have systems and processes. We have our client-facing, our public-facing, and then we have our back-end systems and processes. Your client-facing ones. This is important in a lot of different businesses, but think for web designers, anybody with a service-based business, or anybody with a membership. Those are gonna be your client-facing ones. And if your first systems and processes are running smoothly, you're gonna create trust with those clients. When you do a consult and then you follow up with a proposal and all of that client onboarding goes smoothly, you're establishing with that client that you can be trusted, that you're gonna deliver on time, and that starts so early in the process. So you're really going to showcase your professionalism by having those systems and processes that are client-facing. It also can help you create better clients. And I don't know if anybody else in here has heard this before, but one thing that we have to do when we have clients or customers is we have to teach them how to be good clients and customers. You can't just expect them to come in and know how your business works and know the best way to contact you. You have to kind of set boundaries. And anybody that works in any industry that has a scope of work, or you've got a lot of one-on-one client communications, you've been here. You have had clients that have reached out to you at 11 p.m. on Friday, and then they've reached out to you again at 7 a.m. on Saturday, and 2 p.m. on Saturday, and 4 a.m. on Sunday, and then you finally are opening your email back on Monday, and they are just mad because you've never answered. But if you never set those boundaries with them to begin with, are they being unreasonable? Yes, but they didn't know. You didn't teach them how to be a good customer. And this goes whether you are a membership site doing customer support, or a web designer who is working on maybe a tight deadline. You have to set these out there. And having your systems and processes in place and offering a welcome packet is going to teach them to be better clients, which gives them a better client experience and you a better experience as a business owner. And then it helps us outsource. So one thing before we started the main stage last night, Heath said, what have you guys learned? And somebody said, I learned that if I'm not outsourcing, I'm not doing it right. And that's not always the case. I'm all for outsourcing if it's right for your business, but there's plenty of steps you can get to before that that may save you from outsourcing, and that may not be an expense your business is ready to handle. But if you're going to outsource, you have to do it right. You need to have your systems and processes in place. Otherwise, you hire that VA, and 2 weeks in, it feels like you're having to babysit them. You're still constantly training them how to do things. You're still having to constantly remind them to do things. And if it's because you did not have systems and processes to begin with. So if you're going to hire, you have to make sure you lay that groundwork, or you can hire the best person on earth and it's still going to fail. So once you've got your systems and processes in place, you get more time, your clients trust you more, you can have better client experiences for both yourself and the client, and you might be able to move into outsourcing if that's what's right for your business. So this is the point where I want everybody to have a notebook and we're going to slow down just a little bit, and I want you guys to think about your businesses. So think about what the recurring projects in your business are. I've got a couple examples for you, but just kind of start thinking and start making a list of things. Okay, sorry guys, I guess I'm not loud enough. All right, so a couple things that might be on your list are content creation. If you are a YouTuber, a blogger, we'll cover social media separately, but podcasts. So anywhere where you're creating content regularly, you have a workflow for that you do whether you realize it or not. If it is exhausting to do that content creation, that tells me you don't have a system and process and it's all in your head and it's taking way more energy than it should. Another option is client onboarding and projects. So again, going back to your web designers and that sort of thing. Those might be recurring projects within your business that you do over and over again. Customer support, not one we always think of when we think about systems and processes. That one kind of falls through because it should feel like that should come naturally to everybody, and it doesn't. I have seen businesses with thousands and thousands of customers still handling it via Facebook Messenger or just a Gmail email account. And that's not good for anybody. It's not creating a repeatable process. It's taking more time than it should, and it's probably not working out real well for the clients either. And then social media. If you're in business, you're probably doing social media, and it probably takes up a lot of your time, and you can free up a lot by putting a system and process in place. You could get your scheduled media scheduling down to under an hour and still cover 4 or 5 different platforms and be putting good quality content out without it taking up 4 or 5 hours a day, which I have seen happen in businesses. So think for just a minute and kind of get that list of the recurring projects, and I want you to pick one. Pick one of those projects that you feel just either eats up time, you dread doing it, or you'd like to outsource it. Just pick one of those projects, and then I want you to write down all of the tasks that go into that project. I'm going to give you a couple minutes. Just kind of think through that, jot down the tasks that go into that project. So if you're a podcaster, let's think about everything from you first know, ooh, I want to interview this person, to getting it, asking them, getting it recorded, uploading it to iTunes, sharing it, sending all the information back out to the interviewee. So just stop and think through every piece of the process for that one project. I'll give you just a minute to do that. All right. So as you finish that task, that list of tasks, we're going to go back through and we're going to look at them individually. So what on your list can be automated? Do you see anything on there that you just wish there was a tool that would just do it for you? And obviously there's going to be some that aren't. Yeah?
Following up with I wish I could have like a follow-up customer email or something in Messenger. Hey, how'd you like the product? How you doing? Did you do this? Did you do that? Like action items, like schedule. So I don't have to remember and put reminders in a calendar, phone, or whatever.
It takes up a lot of time for a lot of people. That's a really, really good one. So there are tools that do that, and we'll talk about some of those here in a little bit. Dubsado, though, would be great for you because it would work off of a customer, and then at certain intervals, send them that email or work through a messenger bot to send that and make that connection without you needing to remember to do it. Or it comes up to you want to do it in 2 weeks, but in 2 weeks you're going to be at Yellowstone where there's no Wi-Fi, and you don't want to have to get off of that kind of pattern because of that. So it gives you a little more flexibility when you can automate something like that. So just take a look down your list of tasks. What do you know could be automated and you just haven't taken the time, or what do you wish could be automated? And just notate to the side of that, put a little A next to it. Next, what could be outsourced? What is it you just hate doing? For some people, it's running their analytics. You know you need them to kind of keep a gauge on what your business is doing, but that's the last thing you want to do. For some people, it's social media. For some people, it is sending proposals. So think about what on your list do you just wish you could just give to somebody else to do. Those are the ones you start processing out, let me tell you. All right, and just kind of notate. You can put an O next to the ones you want to outsource. Next, what items absolutely have to be done by you? If you're a podcaster, those interviews probably need to be done by you. If you're a YouTuber, some of that filming or being on camera kind of needs to be done by you. So go ahead and just kind of, you can do an asterisk or whatever you want next to those to note that, all right, these I'm stuck with. And hey, I hope you enjoy a lot of those ones you're stuck with. Otherwise, you might not be in the right business. Just a thought. Next, what items can be batched in one sitting for multiple iterations? This is your social media images. This is thumbnails. This is anything that you could sit down and do a week's worth or a month's worth all at once. So just kind of notate those items that you could batch out. Next, look and see what hasn't been touched on that list. What hasn't fallen into these other categories? Do they actually need to be done at all? Do you have busy work in your list? Are you sharing your work to a platform you don't actually care about? I mean, some of us, if we're sharing to Twitter, is it doing anything? Do you get a single like or retweet on those shares? If so, you might have some busy work there. Look at that list and see what hasn't been in those earlier categories and does it actually need to be done? Also look at some of the ones that are in those categories. Do they really need to be done, or is that just extra work you've created for yourself? And then last, go down that list and mark the things that you enjoy and the things that you just hate. A lot of those things you hate should already have your outsource mark next to them, and a lot of those things you enjoy should already be in that system of it has to be done by you. See where those overlaps are. Okay. The next thing is you need to choose what you're not going to do anymore. So if you had some things on that list that don't actually need to be done, those you probably don't need to do anymore. The other thing that I find here is that we have things that we're pressuring ourselves to do that we really don't need to, and they're taking up time and they're taking up energy, and even if we put a system and process around them, it's still not going to benefit us. So choose the things that you're going to be intentionally incompetent on. John Acuff talks about this in his book, Finish. He talks about being in a phase of life and choosing what's a priority and choosing what's not. The example that he gave, and I loved it, was when they had toddlers, he decided that he was just going to be incompetent at yard work. He wasn't going to do it. He wasn't really even going to worry about paying to do anything more than like the bare minimum. Like they paid to have it mowed so the HOA didn't whine. But having the greenest, weedless yard was not going to be a priority. Think about what in your life you can cut out right now that's just not a priority. So I'm going to be honest, and Josh is going to laugh. Cooking is not a priority for me. Knew he'd laugh. He's been cooking because I have enough other stuff on my plate, and he doesn't. So as much as I sometimes like to cook, not as much anymore as I used to, I've chosen to be, would you say, incompetent at that right now? Useless. Okay, thank you. But are there things that you're pressuring yourself to do that somebody else could be doing or that just don't need to be done at all? I wish that I was probably working out a little bit more, but when it comes to looking at where my energy lies right now and what's actually important, that one, I still do what feels good, but I'm not pressuring to work out every day. Because that's not a priority right this time. Look at what's in your life and choose what's going to be that priority, and that's where you put your systems and processes in place to keep that going. And then I also want you to think about something else about systems and processes, and I don't have a slide in here for this, and I kind of wish I did. What happens if you get sick with your business? If you've been in business 12 years and you don't have systems and processes, you've been just kind of flying through there. What happens if something happens to you or you get sick and you can't run those day-to-day operations? Does your business just fade into the background? Does 12 years of hard work just fade away? Could your spouse step in and you have enough documentation that they could step in and continue running your business and supporting your family? Is there enough systems and processes in place to sell the business? And that's why I was glad that Alyssa brought that up in the beginning. I worked really hard on my hosting business, and then I decided it wasn't for me. And I could have just told those hosting clients that they needed to find new hosting. Here's who I recommended. I'm dissolving this. But that wouldn't have served them. And it pretty much would have been a waste of, 3 years of our lives? Of not being able to travel, of working hard to build this business. But because I had systems and processes in place, instead I was able to walk into the RVE group, go to the Facebook group and say, hey, I'm ready to sell this business. It's not supporting me, but it might be right for some other family. It had profits. It was a good business. It had great clients. And systems and processes were the difference between me being stuck because I was the only one that could do it because there was no documentation, just dissolving it and losing all of that work, or being able to sell it. Systems and processes are an insurance policy for your business. If something happens and you no longer want to or no longer can run it, it's what keeps it from just disappearing. So you want to make sure you have those, even if it doesn't sound like fun. All right. So let's talk about the tools to do this, because I bet this is probably why a lot of you are in here. You know you need them, but now we're at how. How do we do these? So the reason I had you work through your project first is so that you kind of have an idea of what you might be looking for. And after this slide, we're going to do questions. We're going to take some examples, and we're going to walk through some specific ones. But I want to give everybody a head start on some tools that I like to use. Because I use it doesn't mean it's the right tool for you. And if it's not, I'm never going to pressure somebody on a tool that isn't a good fit. Some of you in this room know that I happen to be an Acuity certified expert. I love Acuity, but there are times when somebody calls me, whether Acuity is recommended or they saw me, and it's not the right tool for them. And I'm not going to tell you it is. I love it, but it's not always the right one depending on what you're doing. So these are the tools that I'm currently using in my everyday business. Amazing Marvin is kind of a to-do app. So some people like Asana, there's Trello, there's Wunderlist, there's Don't Forget the Milk, tons of these task items. I happen to really like Amazing Marvin. It's a paid tool, which I didn't want to make the jump to, but it's really, really customizable. Dubsado is great if you are in any kind of service business where you're sending proposals, doing follow-ups. It has a lot of automations within itself so that you can do contracts, invoices, and have a client. You can hang up from that consult call, hit one button, and go out and take a hike. And when you come back, their contract's done, their invoice is done, and their proposal, invoice, contract done, signed, and they're onboarded. They've got your welcome packet while you're out hiking. I love that tool. Acuity scheduling, I'm going to steal what they say about themselves. They're like having a 24/7 personal assistant. If you are doing anything where you are a coach, a photographer, where someone is booking your time, amazing tool. Let's see, ConvertKit. How many people in here actually use ConvertKit already? Yeah, I always get a smattering of hands. I know Heath and Nathan are friends. Great tool, great company to work with. It's email marketing. So MailChimp's another popular one. You also have Aweber, GetResponse, ActiveCampaign, so many different options out there. But especially if you're in content creation, ConvertKit is probably where you should be. CoSchedule, we'll save Zapier for last. CoSchedule is if you are a content creator, again, blogger, anybody focusing heavily on social media, podcasts, even webinars. It's kind of an all-in-one tool, works great with WordPress if you're on WordPress. It can automate a lot of your social and keep it all in one place. And then Zapier or Zapier, I hear it said both ways, can help you actually integrate most of these with each other or with other tools you're using, like your G Suite, HubSpot, almost anything, either Zapier or I left it off, but if this, then that, can be tools that help you automate tools you're already using. So think about the tools that you are already using in your business. And I would love if anybody wants to raise their hand and tell me what tools they're using, either as a CRM, email marketing, tasks. Let's hear what everybody's using. Maybe we'll find some we don't know of. Tailwind. Yes, I love Tailwind. That's a great one for both Pinterest and Instagram. Okay, any others? Yep, Insightly and Jetpack. Yes. Adam? Yes, that one is a great one. Gmail has a lot of built-in integrations that can be really, really, really useful. And they're almost like a whole other world in and of themselves. So. Yes. Yes. Yeah, all of those kind of have their idiosyncrasies. Buffer, Hootsuite, your social media scheduling tools. There's also, Instagram specific, like Planoly. So there's some that'll do it all. There's some that are really great, like Tailwind for Pinterest is really great for Pinterest, where other things don't do it well. So definitely some other tools. Who else? Pipeline? Pipe Drive? Okay, they need to differentiate their names a little bit more. That's a good one too. Sure.
Okay, so my business manager or my business partner and I are like starting something, and now we're overwhelmed with like storing places, like storing stuff in different places.
Yes.
Like Google Drive and Trello and our Slack in different places. Is there something that you'd recommend to like put it all in one area? Storage?
Pick one and move it all.
I mean, they all have different purposes, right? Like Trello is like for brainstorming and stuff, but then you have them stored in Google.
Right.
Converse about them in Slack.
So Drive is what I usually pick, simply because it does integrate with everything else. So if I'm working with a client, and especially for my work, I work with clients that prefer Trello or prefer Asana or prefer Basecamp. And storing all their files in Drive means that I can then port them to any of those. So if I have my central filing system in Drive, it will work with whatever tool whoever I'm working with prefers. So some people are absolute Google haters, and I'm sorry that I'm going to recommend this, but Google Drive is my go-to. Dropbox has its perks, but I do find Drive just is a little bit easier and more accessible for everybody, and then just being able to integrate it so that if you are communicating with your VA in Trello and you need them to have access to this document and know where to grab it, especially because in Google Drive, this is the thing I hear about Google Drive, it's confusing because you can put it in one folder in your Google Drive, but your business partner sets her folders up a little bit different, and there's constantly that, well, where's this file? Well, I have to go back in my email and find the link to it. So it's all about understanding that the same file can exist in one folder on your Google Drive and a different folder on her Google Drive, and it won't mess things up. And once you understand that you take that same file and file it however you want in yours versus in hers, and it's still the same file. You're still not doing the whole, everybody hates the Word docs. Was this the new one? Is it final.2? Is it final.no really final now? Google Drive helps you avoid that. And I find that happens, that's one reason I don't prefer Dropbox is because they do have Dropbox paper and all of that now, but you still run into that. Are we actually working on the same one? I also just like that in Drive, you can view your edits. You have a little bit more of a paper trail of how changes were made when you're working with more than one person. And then again, it's portability, because then if we're in Trello, cool, we can attach them in Trello wherever we need to. If we're in Slack, we can attach them in Slack. If we decide Slack's no longer working for us and we want to go do Asana, we don't have to download everything and then turn around and re-upload it. So Google Drive is just a really good starting point, and then pick the other tool that you want to use for whether it's task management or communications, and try and keep everything there. So you don't need Trello and Slack, pick one. That's kind of my thoughts on it. Right? So we're actually going to jump into some examples. So does anybody have a project that they wrote down where they're just like, I don't know what to do with this? Let's pick one and go through it. Okay. Yep, let's go for it. Okay, so social media, the first thing there is we talked about what can you batch and get a bunch of them done at once. So definitely batch those. Pick a day of the week that you want to do them, or every 2 weeks, whatever your kind of flow is with that. Block out that time, and then see where you can simplify. So you're editing images and then you're putting them in Canva again. Can you combine those? You probably could. So, and I hear that a lot, like, well, I do this in Photoshop or Lightroom, and then I have to go over to Canva and do this. Well, you would probably do that resizing and overlaying and everything in the original system you were using, rather than having to move from one to one. Otherwise, batching is really, social media is kind of fun. You have to sit down and you have to do it, and there's not a lot of ways around that. So batching it and doing it as much as you can at once, rather than letting it trickle out over a couple days, is really the key with social media. The other thing is, if you're not enjoying doing that, document your process. decide where you're storing images, decide your guidelines. What fonts are you using? What colors are you using? Is there a pattern you're using on Instagram? You said you use every other one, does something. Document that process and outsource it. But the way you're doing it, I bet Adam couldn't pick it up and do it. If you needed him to, could he? No? Okay, so the other thing that you can do is as you're choosing them, like as you take a photo and you're like, ooh, I know I want to share this. Having just a system of this is the photo, however you're storing your photos, and dropping a caption in it. And then that way when your VA comes, because even if you hire a VA to do social media, especially in an industry where you're sharing travels and that kind of thing where it's a little bit more personal, at some point you have to give them some guidance on these are the things we're going to share. So just having a repository to here's the photo and here's what I was thinking about why it should be shared. You would be surprised how many VAs are really good at defining your voice and picking up on how you're writing and helping with that. So as long as you're giving them the image, the branding guide, and kind of your idea of what you thought should be said with it, you can actually still outsource that.
So I'm a VA, and I do that. But what I do is for my clients, so my little process with one, we have Dropbox, we have blog content, blog pictures. She writes the blog, she gives me the picture, and I have the schedule. And I know in Dropbox when it's in there. I schedule it, I put it in Notion, send her a draft, ask is it good to go? She says yes. Then I do all the scheduling, do it in the social media, and it's done. So I don't write for her, she does the writing, but she knows she has to meet 48 hours before the deadline. So you can do it that way. Just do a simple Word doc or Google doc, and then you can just say, see picture, and just put the picture date. So she just says, okay, March 23rd, March 23rd. I know, it's easy.
Yep.
Like she said, you can outsource some of it, the writing part, it's still your voice. But the scheduling part, you can always pass it to another VA.
Yep. And that's a big part. I'm glad you mentioned that, Selma. That when you're writing out these steps, the whole process doesn't have to be outsourced. If you need to do the creation stages, and let's see, a podcast is a really good example of this too. Especially we have a lot of podcasters, and we have Kelsey, of course. You have to record the podcast. You can't outsource recording the podcast. That's not going to work. But everything that happens after that can absolutely be outsourced. You drop those sound files in a document, and you've got somebody that can edit. They can write out your show notes. They can create all of your graphics from templates. They can do all of the scheduling for you. They can turn around and email all of that back to the interviewee so that they can share it with, here's the dates that it goes live. So you don't have to outsource an entire process, and I think we get hung up on that. We get hung up on, I don't want to do social media, and we just want to hand it off, and we don't ever want to see it again. But that's probably not realistic for the majority of your businesses. All right, we got any other ones we want to walk through? Who's got a good one? No? No one? Okay.
And it sucks up so much of my time. I literally have a new client that is 6 SOWs for just that client, and it took me probably 3 days because there's so much research about contractors that they get feedback from. But I feel like you were saying before, I don't think all of the steps have to be outsourced or involved from, but parts of it.
Okay, so that's actually super similar to my business, and that's also the part I hate. So I have a standard letter of agreement. and the scope of work gets tacked on to it at the bottom. So that standard letter of agreement stays the same every single time. So when I come off a consult call, I have, instead of like specific packages that have specific things within them, I have tiers. So I'm able to tell, actually, I need a new assistant. Mine just decided to move on. But what I was doing was saying to her, okay, they're gonna be in tier 1. So that tells her which invoice to pull. Here's what the scope of work is. And per tier, they were pretty similar, but there would always be, you know, if they're integrating Acuity with something different, whatever the little tweaks are, I'm able to just jot that down. It's usually in my call notes anyways, and just send that to her and say, hey, this client is at this level, and here's the scope of work that needs to be added to the LOA. And then she's able to go put it in Dubsado, and as soon as she adds that in, the workflow triggers. The contract's sent, the invoice is sent, it's all sent. So just, you're going to talk to that person, you have to talk to that client to figure out what that scope of work is, make some quick notes, have a standard format for it, and outsource the actual putting it together and sending part. I've been there, and that's why I know the answer, because that's my least favorite part. I can take days for a proposal sometimes, but it's all in my head. My assistant doesn't know. They weren't on that call, and it's ridiculous of me to ask them to be on that call. But if I'm probably jotting down notes as I'm going anyways, basically that scope of work's already sitting there. I just have to do a quick email and send it over. And you can get in the habit, if you're using something for like to schedule those calls. So even if you just open up the Google Calendar where that was in your calendar and add it in the description, and then ping your assistant, or you can even automate doing that part of, hey, this call's done, here's their price point and scope of work. So little bit of work for you, and then hand it off to somebody else. Yes. All right, who else? I saw a hand over here a second ago. No, Teresa? Okay.
Does, unless the host is managing that. The actual teaching, which is that creation is what I want to do. The follow-up, after they come to the class, to, making notes, this is what's coming up. Analytics, to know who's looking at what, and then target different courses and who's taking these courses. So, and you have some things in Acuity that help with that, what they've already taken, so we know which class to promote next.
Okay, so that was a lot. Did everybody else get a little overwhelmed there? Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Well, I wonder, Wes, do we have another mic that we can bring out? No, Wes isn't even in here. That's Lucas. I feel bad now. Okay. So she was talking about courses, and Liz, are you in here? No, she must be busy with Chelsea. We just rolled out a course with Liz Wilcox, and we went kind of through the same thing, because they were actually on a really tight schedule, so not the year in advance, but the videos, the slides, getting all of that together is a major headache. It's probably the worst part of doing a course. So being organized and intentional about setting your time for it, and templates. Everything almost in your whole task list there needs a template to be able to do it over again. Whether it is a pitch proposal, when you're proposing it out to those other studios, whether it's your slides, whether it's your email marketing and social media marketing, all of that can be templated out, which will shave off a ton of time within that process. Templates also means that you can hand it off to somebody else, tell them, here's the name, here's the date, here's the studio it's at, please fix these, and you can just hand that off. Again, you've already got your scheduling on lockdown using Acuity, and of course that does change per host, but being able to just offer and say, that, okay, this is how we normally do it. If you have your own way, that's cool, but you don't have to start from scratch. And if you have something you can hand to those host schools, they're probably going to use it.
I think this guy will work here if you want to use it.
We'll switch to whoever's doing questions.
You want to be that guy?
He'll be the runner. See, I told you guys he was helpful. Okay. Okay, so Teresa, what other parts of that do you feel like aren't quite systemized enough or are taking up way too much time within the process?
Well, I can honestly say that systems are not my strong suit. Teaching is my strong suit and showing up. So I'm going to say that just staying on schedule with, I have been the only person doing it, so sometimes that thank you note comes a little bit too, with not in the correct time frame. So they all need a really good system, I think is the answer to your question.
Yeah, they do. And so systemizing that out, just making sure that you have actually written down all of those steps. If you have, certain templates that you want, if it's going on social media or it's going in our email, it needs to look like this. Doing it once, but making sure to document the process means that you don't have to do it again. You can have somebody else come in and do it again, which sounds like what you need to have happen.
Exactly.
And for those of you that are like, well, I don't want to outsource, I don't want to pay for a VA, or you've had a bad experience with a virtual assistant or something like that because it's taken them too many hours and cost too much, if you do the legwork, if you have the templates set up, whether you pay somebody to do it one time for you, there are people out there, I do that work for people, there's other people out there that will come in and help you set up those systems if you just absolutely cannot wrap your head around it or you're that far underwater. Putting that first investment of either time or money to get those systems up and running means that you're going to spend less money on that assistant later because it's going to take them fewer hours because they're not having to do everything from scratch. They're not having to spend so much time on the phone or an email with you trying to understand what's in your head and what your vision is because that system is already there. So that will make an assistant either less expensive or just a much better experience all around by doing that work once, getting it done right, and then outsourcing it after that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Josh.
Probably. I'm Summer. I am actually launching a course for how to utilize a VA, so all of the things that you're saying, I'm like, yes, exactly. And like what you're saying about creating the process is the first step, like understanding what you're spending your time on, and then literally like, I know that it seems like a lot of effort initially to onboard a VA or anybody into like doing what you're doing, but if you can use, and I just remembered like Loom is amazing. Yes. Like it's free. You can just put it on your Chrome extension or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like just Google like add Loom, it's free. Yep. And it's just, it records your screen. And so like even as you're onboarding your VA, if you're explaining the process to them, you can hit the record button and then go through the process with them and you can say, hey, you can refine this as you see fit. Like it's not as big of a process as it feels when you're like looking at all of the things if you break it down a little bit. And then you can record yourself doing the process too and then give that to the VA. So like you don't have to do it while they're on the call, you can just give it to them. Or, I mean, like you can even have a VA create simplified processes from your processes.
Yes.
Like you can do that too.
Yep. So actually, you worked with me through Acuity. You probably got some Loom videos, and that should have been in my original toolkit. So it's loom.us. You just add it as a Chrome extension, and if you're on something that you want to show somebody, you just hit it real quick and tell it to start, and it records your screen. And then it creates a link automatically that you can then send to whoever you need to that shows them that.
I think it's zoom.us and then loom.com.
Oh. Is it loom.com? It's loom.something. It's not
.com.
.com.
Okay, maybe it isn't.
Use loom.com. There we go. Loom, Zoom, they all
I know,
are
I'm like zoom.us, I know. Okay,
yeah,
anyway,
so
sorry.
yeah, use Loom. L-O-O-M.
Mm-hmm.
Use loom.com.
So I didn't have a question. I was just going to say.
No, that was great because I should have had that in the original slide. That one's so handy. They do have a pro version now that you can like download, but it's in Chrome, but you don't have to record just Chrome. You can record anything you have open. And yeah, totally free if you're not doing the pro version. Adam, can you be loud enough real quick?
Yeah. What's your like repository or like platform that all these systems and processes like Loom videos and
Yeah, okay, so it's going to be different for each business. So for mine, I rely very, very heavily on Google Drive. When I'm working with somebody, whether it's a client and their team I'm working with, I tend to default to whatever they are going to use because I'm teaching them to use their systems. So it's all about yours and what you're going to work. Some people love Trello and having a board with the subtasks on the card, that's this process works. Some people prefer Asana or Asana. Slack. So my thing is your repository, all the documents that you need, Google Drive. And then whether you're recording the systems and processes, it depends on, do you actually want people to be able to check them off every time? Does there need to be some sort of automation in there, or is it simply a reference guide? If it's simply a reference guide, do it in a Google Doc. But if it's something where you want the assistant to be able to check it off, you're probably going to have to move to something like Asana. Does that help? Yep. Okay. All right, who's got the mic? Oh, you've got it back? I thought somebody else was having it back there. Okay. Yes, Teresa? Oh, it's not going to be a softball question? Thanks.
Hey, I know you are a gravity forms expert too, and one of the ways that we have cut overwhelm in our business is to look at some core areas that we can focus on, and like you were talking about the tiers. So we've done that with our 3 key areas, but then we also do a little bit of custom work. So, I mean, I've saved us a lot of work by channeling most of the business in through these services, but the custom work, and I'm so glad Brian's not in here. Can you give us some ideas about how we can onboard people through custom work? Usually it's like a site refresh or something like that, but I know there's going to be one-off stuff. What can we do to make it easier and more streamlined, or what can I make Brian do?
How can we make the husband do it? Ask Josh, I haven't figured that out. No. So the thing is, it's similar to what we were talking about a second ago with having that standard letter of agreement and then adding that scope of work on top of it. Because if it's all website work, that standard letter of agreement, and you've seen what I do. My standard letter of agreement, I can use it for Acuity projects, I can use it for course launches, I can use it for web design. I have used it for all of them because it's standard of I'm doing a service for you and there's maybe one thing I need to change in that. And using like Dubsado, you can have it pull. You should be able to do that with Gravity Forms depending on what you're using as well. Have it pull that information in if that changing that one thing is too much. But keeping that letter of agreement vague enough to go across your services that need it, but leaving spots for that scope of work to be added so that it's still covering what you need it to cover. So it's all about where can you find those common threads and use those to template something out. Does that make sense?
I think I'm just getting hung up on the custom and the scope, because the scope has to do with preferences, and then there's all this back and forth, and I don't think I'm doing an awesome job of that.
Then it sounds like we need to sit down and talk a little bit more in depth about that one. I can see the look on your face. Okay, you had a question a second ago, didn't you? Nope, behind you. Yes.
What's a Google Chrome extension?
A Google Chrome extension. All right, good. If anybody else has questions like this where we've mentioned something and you were like, what is that? Raise your hand and ask. Okay, so if you're using Google Chrome as your browser, even if you're on a Mac, for the love of God, stop using Safari. So, or Edge. Oh gosh, if you're on a PC, don't use Edge. Chrome and Firefox, people. Okay, so, what? Oh, good. Thank goodness, it's about time. Thank you, Paul. Okay, so within Chrome, you can add like these little apps to the browser to make your life easier. So there are things like if you use Evernote, you can have an Evernote extension. So you click on the little green elephant and it will allow you to add whatever you're looking at over to Evernote. So it's like a little button that appears in the top of your browser that allows it to do something. So in the case of Loom, it allows you to click on it and record your screen without having to go open up a whole new app. You can tie it into Google Calendar, Google Keep. There's almost everything. Yes, password manager. There's so many little bitty apps that you can add onto your browser that just make things run smoother. My favorite, and Heath and Alyssa talk about this one too, it kills your Facebook feed so that you don't see the feed and can't get distracted. There's Chrome extensions for everything, but what it is a little app that lives inside your browser that does something, essentially. Yes. Yeah. So if there's something that you just wish, some tool.
Self-explanatory where this file is stored if you're recording your screen.
Yeah, so for Loom, it stores it in your Loom account, but like the moment you hit stop recording, it goes ahead and copies the link to the video to your clipboard, so you can just go wherever and paste that link in. But then it stores it in a little folder on the Loom website in your Loom account to go back and reference them later. So like I create little folders in there for each client, and then they can go see all the videos I've made for them. So most of them make it pretty self-explanatory, and there's lots of great tutorials. But if you have something you're wanting, like you're like, well, I wish I could just do this from my browser, search whatever it is, an extension, and you will find just about anything.
Hey, Dan. And I live in an RV, so I'm walking around or I'm not at my computer, and it'd be nice to be able to do a video, not just like a Vox or something like that, and send them a link in an email. Right now I'm like doing it on my camera, then uploading to Drive, then sending them. It's a real pain. Do you know of anything like that?
I know Screencast will record from your phone or tablet screen as well. I'm trying to think if I've actually tried it without like mine being hooked up like to my laptop, but I believe it goes down and it will do it off of your phone screen as well, without it like being hooked to your laptop. And there's another one that's not coming to mind right now, but shoot me an email, and I will find it for you. Yep.
If you're on an iPhone, there is a little screen recording option.
Oh, that must be new, because I don't know about that.
In your operating system, like for me it shows up, if you can't see this, for me it shows up in my, whatever that thing is called. Control center. Anyways, it looks like a bullseye, and when you hit it, it starts recording whatever you are doing at that moment on your iPhone. We've used it in a couple groups that I'm in just to quickly show somebody like, how do you take a self timer on your phone? How do you add a button to your home screen? So it doesn't do a lot, but it does just enough if you just need to give a quick tutorial for somebody.
Okay. Does it record, like if you're talking, explaining what you're doing?
I don't know, I haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
I just more did it to show somebody how to do a button thing.
We might have to experiment with that and see what it does, because I just upgraded my iPhone and I don't see that, so might have to go look.
11 years of iPhone and oh my god.
You need to manually add it to your open
To the control center? All right. So are you iPhone or Samsung? Okay, so that was helpful. So there we go.
Do you have any good apps for transcribing?
Honestly, I use what's native. So in Notes, you can turn on the dictation and have it work. Evernote has, I feel like Evernote is better. I use Evernote for a lot of stuff on my phone just because it syncs a lot quicker than anything else. Typically, the normal dictation apps is what works. Are you wanting to transcribe like as you talk, like more dictation, or are you looking to like transcribe videos?
Transcribe videos.
Okay, so that's where it gets a little bit more complicated.
Sure.
Trying to think. Teresa, do you know? Yeah, I'm having the same problem. It's either Rev or Happy Scribe that we're thinking of, because we've had this conversation in our mastermind a couple times. Rev is a, okay. I'm just going to tell the app. Oh, all right. Timmy. Okay, cool. Which one? Happy Scribe is. Okay. Okay. Yeah, if you're recording your videos in Zoom, they have a built-in transcription option now. Yeah, it's one of the like paid tier ones. So, all right. Who else? Okay. Yep. All right. We've got like 1 minute. So one last question. awesome. Okay. Cool. We'll have to add some of these to our resources page too. All right, guys. So I'll be around for a little bit this afternoon. If you guys have questions that you didn't get in or you want to talk about your processes, I'll be around. You guys enjoy the next sessions.